You're watching News at Prime. Let's get into this discussion now. President Cyril Ramaphosa's 7th administration will see several government departments being led by new political heads as a government of national unity begins to take shape. The ANC slumped to just over 40% of the national vote, forcing it to have to find other parties in order to form a government. Let's talk more now about this with Yako, who is with the Association of Former Directors General. Ms. Yako, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. I want to start off with this period that we are in, where the only member of cabinet there is the president. Based on your experience, how disruptive or how tense are things in a time like this?
Good evening, Xoli, and good evening to the viewers. Based on my experience, there would be a little bit of anxiety in terms of who your political principal is going to be when you are in a position of a DG. But really, it's about who would then be appointed by the president to take the work of government forward. So much as there might be some anxiety, but I think the work of the departments continue.
The anxiety on the part of the head of department, which would be the Director General, what would precipitate that kind of anxiety? Is it someone that is completely new to the department, or does it have to do with perhaps process? Just fill us in on what is it that DGs worry about most during this period?
I think the reality is that it is at a particular level relational. All right. So you might have had a previous minister. There's a program, there's a strategic plan that you'll be implementing, obviously based on the national MTSF, which will then need to be done. And there's a program that the department is following. And it's about continuing some of that. And also maybe there might be some changes here and there. But it's also just to understand the person that would come into the position, whether at a personal, relational, and probably professional level, I must add, that you would be able to work together.
So it's very interesting how you've described this, because it's at relational level and sometimes it's got to do with a strategic program by the department that was being followed, and whether or not that may or may not be disrupted. And this would be in a change of government within an ANC-led administration. In this instance, for the first time, some departments are going to have people who come from different political parties. How elevated do you think that anxiety is right now?
I think if I was a Director General today, which I'm not, I would say that, listen, as a country, we have a constitution that guides us, right? And that should be the overarching framework or mandate in terms of what we do. We also have, which I think people forget about it, that the one document or plan that we adopted as South Africa was the National Development Plan, which almost all of the parties, political parties, subscribed to. And it was quite a process, and that involved quite a lot of consultation, involvement by civil society, and leading to the adoption of the plan.
Yeah.
So there might be nuances from political parties over here and there, but the reality is that we have a program. And that program must guide how we implement the priorities of this country and how we deal with some of the challenges that are facing our country, which are known. And And I think if that is then what guides a DG, that shouldn't be really a big problem or a big challenge. However, as I said, sometimes it's just people depend. I mean, there is the personal element which we can't really discount.
Yeah, the relationship, Ms. Yako, the relationship between the political head and the administrative head. That relationship has been written about in the media over many years. And I think one of the seminal moments of that period was the era of state capture. We can't forget people like Themba Masego, who told us what they were instructed, even at the level of the president, to do. And so, yes, on paper, there is a guide to say the law allows you to do this, but when you deviate, you are now going to be in violation of the Finance Management Act or the Municipal Finance Management Act. So the question here is about the relationship between the two. Do you believe that there should be some kind of stringent requirement that guides how these two ought to relate? Or perhaps it is there, it's just that people violate it willy-nilly?
Yeah, I think, I mean, let's talk about that relationship. It is about implementing the program of government, really. That's what should be the fundamental basis of that relationship. And there are statutes that govern it. There are roles and responsibility. There is, you correctly indicate, that there is the role of the executing authority, which would be the minister or the premier, whatever the case may be. And there would be then the accounting officer. And I think those are clear. The roles are clear. And sometimes then there is, and which is what we saw in the state capture, it had nothing to do with what was in the prescript. It was basically an encroachment. And for me, as I was reading some of the principles around the issue of the statement of intent, and I really, as AFDG, want to talk about the administration here. But I mean, I think issue for me, they are bringing those principles. I mean, the whole section around governance in the Zondo report. We need to bring some of those principles back, because there is a particular lane, if you like, for the minister and for the and for the DG. But you need to work together, understanding the different roles and that you do have.
Talk us through those key principles.
I mean, firstly, it's basically, I mean, first and foremost is understanding the different roles that we play in terms of the law. So whether that law is it's the primary law, the Constitution, or the specific pieces of legislations that you might have referred to, whether it is the PFMA or the Public Service Act. In terms of the Public Service Act, there is someone who's responsible for the appointment. And let me just take a minute there, right? Just because that's an interesting one in terms of the Public Service Act. Because the Public Service Act then gives the responsibility of appointment of members of the department to the minister, and therefore the minister needs to then delegate to the Director General. And I think this is probably where the role of the Public Service Commission, both in terms of appointment, professionalization, but also in helping the delegation. And I mean, I remember in my days as a DG, I was fortunate because apart from those positions that the minister had to take to cabinet, which were the DDGs and the DG itself. But from chief director onwards, the minister at the time, and I served in two departments, and two ministers delegated the appointment of people in, but I was given certain principles. Those principles were I need to make sure that competent people with the right skills were appointed, that I wouldn't bring my friends to the public service, people that understand the mandate of the department, who are committed to the principles of a democratic South Africa, developmental state, and all of that. So I was given the principles so I could work within the principles. But I did have some of my colleagues that were not given the same kind of delegation. And I think part of the conversation about the relationship is that what is that delegation framework? What is a DG give? How much powers is the DG given to run the department?
Yeah.
And there is current conversations about reforming that. And I think part of the things that the seventh administration must do is about embedding that reform agenda, taking some of these issues that have already started being discussed and taking them towards implementation.
What has taken so long, though? Because it would seem to me that is perhaps one of the key issues to deal with, because there will be issues of nepotism here and there, but maybe that role should be much more defined as to who has the power to appoint people in a department, because as the administrative head, I would assume that is part of the main functions of the DG. It surprises me when you say the political head may have a say as well.
Yeah. I mean, as you're saying, I mean, that should be a no-brainer, hey? But it isn't. And that's why part of the reform agenda is to correct those things. And for me, from an administration perspective, and the effectiveness of administration and making sure that departments continue discharging of their responsibility and their mandate, and also account for that to primarily the political principle, and then to parliament and other oversight structures and the rest of society. That should be what we should allow, or it should be clear to everybody. But I think part of the journey is going to have to strengthen that and make sure that there's an understanding. But that presupposes, which is a point I would want to make, is that there is I think regulations on the one hand, but I think there must be a relationship of trust between the head of the administration and the political principle. And that can only work if the principles of ensuring that we're both here to serve South Africans. We're not here to serve ourselves. We have different roles. And I report to you on a daily basis. But give me the mandate and the space to be able to execute what I need to do.
Yeah.
And that also is based on whether I am able to do the work that I'm doing, that I'm supposed to do. Hence, there is a need or a call of professionalization.
Yako, thank you very much for your time and giving us insight into some of the workings of government, a relationship of trust between the political head and the administrative head. Thanks indeed for your time. A former DG of Water and Sanitation, I think she was.